Okay, so welcome to part 2. Now the model has been primed, it's been polished through, and we're ready to start applying paint. As previously alluded to, I have actually painted the walkway here black and masked that off, but the first thing I want to do is spray some silver or metal paint on the propeller and onto the wing roots, so that I'm planning to use a little bit of masking fluid. To start that chipping off. So I'm just spraying a little bit of thinner through my airbrush. It's a little bit sticky. I think it's actually probably needs a little bit of a clean up. So this is just some LP11 silver, some of the Tamiya lacquer, and all I'm just going to do is quite low pressure. I'm just going to spray it along the wing roots here. Hopefully you can see I'm not a misting it on kind of guy. I just tend to get irritated when I watch people airbrushing, you know, look like tiny little, like, you know, this sort of thing for hours. I think there are normally quicker and more efficient ways of getting the finish you're after, and that's what I do. So that's a little bit of silver on the wing roots, so we'll let that dry, and I want to do similar. The prop received a coat of Tamiya fine surface primer from a spray can last night. A little bit of a polish this morning. There we go. And that's pretty much it for the first step. So I'm just looking at the PDF here of the of my chosen subject, and as you can see quite clearly on here, there's a 14mm wide sky stripe around the rear fuselage. So again, you can see I'm not actually misting anything here. All of my weathering on my spraying tends to be done on top of an opaque coat of the base colour. I don't like to do marbling over black or anything like that. It's just not the way I work. I don't enjoy it, I don't like it, and I don't think it looks very good. So I like to always start with an opaque coat of the base colour to work from. And again, there we go. We'll just leave that to dry off. and we can mask all that off and we can start painting the actual camouflage. And so now we're ready to paint the undersides. That's ocean grey, that's not the one I want. The undersides of this one are medium sea grey, and in this instance I'll be using Mr. Colour 363. Now all my paint schemes start off with an opaque base coat. I'm not somebody who will pre-shade or marble as such. I'll do intermediate shading, but all my paint schemes start with a solid coat of the base colour. So I'm just going to throw a load of that in there. Just dropping the pressure back. So I'm getting a nice atomisation but not blasting paint dust everywhere. There you go, that is in a very few minutes. You can see it's not 100% opaque, but it is a generally fairly consistent coat. So I'll show you my weathering process. So to start the weathering onto this, what I'm going to use is some any old white. This is just a gloss white. Mr. Colour levelling thinner. And this is where the marbling job really begins. But it's not this, but it's not like micro marbling it. It's just working over the whole surface. In one direction. And then the other, I tend to keep it within panel lines. But it's not, like I say, I'm not being overly careful or anything like that, and this will get this done. In a very, very few minutes. So I do tend to see people doing this, you know, a tiny bit at a time, going really, really slowly, and working in and around details and things. But hopefully you can see it's a very rapid process indeed. And just as spraying in a couple of directions, like two lots of basically lines perpendicular to each other, gives a really heavily marbled appearance very, very quickly. Then very occasionally I'll pick an odd panel here and there, and really do something else with it. It's just going to make the odd bit of that really show up. Like so. There we go, that is basically, it's a nice marble pattern that will knock back nicely. Okay, so Ueno black. Just giving my airbrush a quick. So I'm just going to throw a bit of black in there now, like so. Good smack of leveling thinner. Give it a so this is a very different pattern I do this time with the black. It's a lot more subtle. And hopefully you can see that it tends to be, it doesn't follow any of the panel lines, it's just a weathering pass. Just a weathering pass that fades out towards the rear. I'm going to particularly emphasising it on the belly here, where we know that the Spitfire's got dirty. But hopefully you can see what it is a series of kind of thin T-shapes, largely or almost exclusively trailing back. And then at the cross of the T I just widen it out, but as I say, there's no this is as likely to be away from a panel line as with a panel line. See here, I'm going to do it along that panel line. But the longitudinal one is away from the panel line. Again though, really quick work, it's not... You might want to pick some areas where you know that there would be, you know, some oil or grease leaks on the real aircraft. And if you want to join bits up, do so. And if you want to add little dog legs and things, it really doesn't. It really doesn't matter. The randomness here is the key. But a lot of it is really in those corners, making sure that you kind of round those corners off. Again, if you've got a method that works for you, absolutely continue to use it. This is what I like. I've and again, you can even go back and pick the odd panel out in the dark colour. Even if you like to do it along panel lines, which is, you know, entirely up to you. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. But I would say just make sure that you go back I can't stress how softening those corners. How softening those corners will just make it look a bit more organic. And what we're going to do is blend this all back. This paint doesn't have to be ultra thin either. As long as it's atomizing well, I would even suggest slightly thicker paint is not a bad idea, because it just means you'll get through this stage quicker. Okay. And just moving over the entire surface of the model. Blending all your hard work back. Now obviously you don't want to obliterate this, you still want it to be visible. But one of the things I often see and think people don't do is enough blending. I appreciate that this is, you know, work, and people want to show off the work they've done, and I think that sometimes results in people not blending their paint back enough. Now, as you can see there, I'm going back over this black fee, the black stuff, and giving it an extra I mean, you can even do it this way. Look, I'm just going roughly over it all, because the black is very, very obtrusive, and you ultimately want that to be a hint at the end, not really, really stark. So with that done like that, then we'll go over the whole model, give it the entire blend. Again, even this blend coat can be done in a kind of slightly marbling fashion, if you prefer. Just keep hitting that black back. Until it's hinting at weathering rather than being completely in your face, and that is getting somewhere where I want it to be. So I'm just going to give, I've been quite targeted so far. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just looking around, there's a little bit of pale on that end that I'm not happy with, and a little bit there. So what I'm going to do now is add more of the thinner, so that it's a very translucent coat now, and then I'm just going to blend back with this quite translucent coat. It's going on wet. Keep checking it from all angles where the light catches. And again, this black stuff, that's faded back. I could do with a little bit more there. But hopefully you can see the marbling gives a sort of a weathered appearance to the paint, and the black gives a kind of slightly underlying streaky effect. And that But it's quite possible to go back later and tweak this if you decide that something needs tweaking. But there you go, that's the underside of my Spitfire done. I'm pretty much ready to move on to masking to spray the top sides. So yeah, that's like three different colours and 4 coats of paint in like 45 minutes. Obviously the benefit of using lacquers is how quickly they dry, and it allows you to move straight on and even apply lacquer over slightly wet coats, over slightly wet undercoats without any trouble at all. So that's that, and we'll let that dry, and then we'll mask off, and we'll come back and do the top sides. Okay, so the underside's been painted and weathered in, so I've masked off what I need to mask off for spraying the top side. So what I'm going to do is just do exactly the same process on the top sides. The opaque base coat, the intermediate weathering coats, and then the blend coat. My base colour for this is Mr. Colour 362 Ocean Grey. It's a colour I've always really liked. I have done a little bit of used a bit of foam to put some masking fluid along the wing roots there of the areas I've painted silver, so it's so that can be removed later on and give the appearance of chipping, hopefully. And so yeah, essentially doing exactly the same thing with Ocean Grey. So there's the same procedure carried out on the Ocean Grey, which means we're basically ready to start looking at applying the camouflage green. So with the grey all dry, we're ready to start applying the dark green. See, I've got the plans here, which we'll be referring to when I'm doing the dark green camouflage pattern. And I'm going to mask and spray this, and what I'm going to use is AK's camouflage putty. There are lots of different versions of these. I've got a lot of this therapy putty as well, which is exactly the same stuff, it just comes in differing hardnesses. Now the thing with this putty is it's quite useful, but it does set it'll settle very quickly. It takes minutes to settle. So if you're going to use it to mask and spray, you have to work quickly. You cannot mask a portion of this off, go away, come back later on and then spray it, because this will have settled in and you get a hard line with a ridge on it and all that kind of stuff. In fact, you'll do that even if I was to mask this whole thing in one sitting and then spray it immediately. By the time I'd got to spraying it, the putty will have settled. So you've got to do it, you know, effectively a section at a time, and then spray, remove it and move on. So I'm going to be using Mr. Colour 361 dark green for this, and what I'm going to do is roll it into a sausage. You can roll it out on anything. If I was doing this with blue tack, I'd mask the whole thing off and fill in, and then start spraying, because blue tack, once it's in place, it doesn't settle in the same way that this stuff does. But what I'm going to do is so this gives me so you can see how kind of susceptible it is to pressure. It will settle almost immediately, but all I'm going to do is just get that in there like so, manipulate it a little bit till it's where I want. Fill a little bit away from the area, just squeeze it out flat like so, just to make a little thin film like that you can then just use it like that to mask off. The edges. Just make sure that your brush is clean. Just going to check that I've got and then with that in place, that's a little bit thick at the moment. A bit thick, my pressure's a little bit high, so I'm just going to bring the pressure down a bit. With that, it's like immediately remove the masking putty and then move on to another area. So you can see area here on the tailplane. The thing is, it's so quick to do this that if you're not happy with what you're doing, just remove it. Just remove it and reapply, like so. Again. So. That's it. Boom. Get it off. And then immediately move on to your next bit. Okay, but then you can go like that, and then you need to just peel that whole lot off in one hit. So So all the main camouflage has been applied, and I've just masked off to spray the yellow leading edges of the wings here. So there's a lot of masking tape and some liquid masking as well, just to ensure that all the surfaces are sealed. And as usual, when you're spraying yellow, the first thing I'm going to do is give it an undercoat of generally speaking, white or pink. In this case, the white primer was the first to hand, so I'm going to do that, and it's just spraying along the mask leading edges here. Like so. As you can see, immediate fully opaque coverage, so So with all the main camouflage paint on the model, one of the things on my particular subject is that it's the United States Army Air Force, and it was originally delivered with RAF markings, which were subsequently overpainted before applying the US markings. And what this means is on the upper and lower wings, and also the tail flashes as well. If we just wait for my PDF to update. Hopefully you can see there the US star actually sits inside an area of fresh paint, and on the opposite wing, again, I'll just wait for the PDF to catch up with the scrolling. On the opposite wing, what we've got is just an area of fresh paint where the roundel was. So there are numerous ways of representing that with different paint and things. What I've done is, on my silhouette cutter, I've cut some vinyl masks out to the size of the fresh paint area where the roundels are going to go on the upper and lower wings. Excuse me while I just get a little bit of masking tape out here. I'm terrible for overspray. It's one of the banes of my existence, so I just want to cover that up there. So yes, what I've done is I've masked off with vinyl and surrounding areas protected to the size of the RAF roundels that were over painted. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some clear smoke. This is Mr. Hobby 101, it's called Smoke Grey. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a light coat of that over these areas, and hopefully that'll darken it down a little bit and give it the appearance of fresh paint. So I'm just going to bring you in a little bit so that we can see what we're doing. And really that's all I wanted to do there. They like overspray from a few different directions. Then we'll do the same on the upper wing. Just check that the vinyl mask is right down. Sorry about that, I'm out of... Again, this is not, it's not being done in any particular direction, it's just you're trying to get the whole thing universally covered, so any and all directions for this are fine, and it's just ensuring that there's a good covering going over. It's not overly wet, so it's not running under. I'll also have to do the tail here. But with that done, what we can do is immediately remove all the masking. Yeah, yeah. I hope you'll agree that is pretty much. It's not made it too stark, but it is. Ignore the fact that that's a glossy smoke coat, but it's just darkened it down just a little bit for us.